So I guess we can jump right into the fandom topic then.
Okay.
Uh, Previously on the podcast, we have had on an expert in fan studies, Monia Ali. And one thing that she's mentioned in a bunch of her essays is that in a lot of fandoms for musicians, the musicians become the object of fandom and not so much the music. However, in your case, you seem to like the music a lot. How into the person are you too? Is there like a balance?
I'd say you're giving me way too much credit if you think that I'm more focused on the music than her. I love Taylor Swift. She's great. But no, my core obsession or obsessive behavior or listening goes with the music itself. I'm not
Mhm.
so much following her personal life the way other Swifties do.
Gotcha. And but you've definitely have you encountered people who it's like primarily the person for them?
Oh, more Taylor than the music.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think so. Like, in the only case, I think it would be or the reverse, where people are saying, "Oh, I hate Taylor Swift," because it's just funny to say that they hate Taylor Swift, or it's cool to say that, and it has like nothing to do with her music.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say I've met someone on the other side that's, "Oh, I just like Taylor Swift and don't care about her music." It's a
Interesting.
pretty big part of her identity.
Yeah, so it's like it's not like the One Direction fan that Monia's talked about a lot, where like sometimes there's an obsession with getting their music to chart or whatever and like coordinated efforts,
Mm-hmm.
but apparently sometimes like not so much the actual content that they're producing is the thing.
Well,
Um,
I'd say that yeah, there's a lot of coordinating to try to get music to chart in the Swiftie fandom. Um, I mean, it is to get Taylor trending, but it's typically something that's just been released, so it has a good shot of being in the top, whatever Billboard
mhm.
100. So it is to get Taylor trending, but also it's always like a specific song that's she released a single or she just released an album, and it's to get that new thing at the top.
Mhm. Gotcha. Yeah, so it's like, but they still also listen to it. Like they're not just putting it on silent or something.
I think there are. That's an interesting point you bring up because I think there are what they call like sleep streamers, where someone will have it playing on a loop overnight, and
Mhm.
gets them a lot of minutes, and it helps, I guess, boost Taylor's stats. I don't think she needs the help, but people do that.
Yeah. I mean, with somebody as big as her, I'm not sure like one or two people doing like the obsessive silent stuff will make like that much of a difference.
I'm sure it's more than two, but like
Oh,
there are people who like. Okay, yeah, that's a little too literal. There are people who do that.
yeah, it's at least 2.7 people. Um, so the one thing I was curious is like, how did you get into the fandom?
So I started listening to her music, and I mean, I listened to it when Fearless came out, so back in early 2010s, or Speak Now, sorry, in 2010. Um, but I didn't become like a rabid Swiftie until around the time 1989 came out, and even then, I wasn't a big Twitter person, so I really had no idea what was going on in her life at any moment beyond knowing she was on tour. Um, so I'd say like when I got into the Swiftie fandom, like the fandom itself, with the culture, I think that happened with Midnights because that's the first time that I'd like gone on Twitter for an album release. And since then, I've been on there pretty consistently. So I'd say like getting into the Swiftie fandom, not just being a Swiftie, but being in like immersed in the people part. I would say
Yeah,
that's when Midnights came out. So
gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah, because there's like a difference between just being a fan and like being in the fandom, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Yeah, that makes total sense to me. And is it mostly located on Twitter, the fandom still?
No, she's on TikTok. I mean, I was gonna say the majority of the discourse I want to say is more doable on Twitter. There's more room for conversation. I mean, TikTok, yes, there are comments, but the interface is not quite the same where you can see like a whole thread of interaction in the same way you can on like Twitter or Facebook. So I'd
Mhm.
say a lot of the discourse does take place on Twitter.
but not like Blue Sky or Threads or those two.
So I think she may be on Threads. I don't have Threads. Blue Sky, the last time I checked, I don't think she had an account on it. So I don't think any of us actually ever ended up transitioning to Blue Sky because half the reason, or more than we'd like to admit, we hang out on Twitter in hopes of getting noticed by her. In the 1 in 1 million chance that would ever happen, it's kind of like a badge of honor to be like, oh, Taylor +1 in my bio. I'm +0 at the moment, but yeah, because she's not on Blue Sky, she might be on Threads, but that's Twitter. Yeah, is the big one.
Gotcha. And has that been affected at all by like the people mass exodusing off there or whatever over like Elon Musk buying it or anything like that?
It's funny you mentioned that because there was a period of time where the people that I followed, at least, were saying, "Oh, we can't be on this app anymore. We have to go to Blue Sky or Blue Ski, as I call it." And we said that, but everyone immediately came back. 1 second.
Yeah, I mean that I think that happened in a lot of cases. With like I remember when Elon Musk first was moving to buy it or first bought it, I think this was like 2022 maybe. There were like a ton of people who said they were going to leave and then didn't, or like they very briefly left, and then Blue Sky didn't really take off until the 2024 like election. So yeah, I think that probably happened across like a lot of domains, people saying they were going to leave, but then it's like I don't know, like I'm a boomer, it's hard for me to get adjusted to like a new platform, um, things like that. So it's like yeah, it's difficult to switch off. Like it took me a while to get used to Substack. Look, I was on Facebook way longer than anybody had any reason to be, just because it was familiar and because like the pages I followed were on there and like the groups I was in were on there, especially like feminist groups. This was from my Miss Andrews period. Um, so other things on the fandom, who is she having like who's the beef with right now? Is there beef with anybody?
My conspiracy theory / probably not a conspiracy theory is artists will not refute claims of feuds because it just puts their name out there more. Like it's honestly it's mutually beneficial to both because if you have one extreme end of one fandom attacking the other extreme end of the other fandom, all you're doing is just posting, I'll say it, Olivia Rodrigo 1,000 times, like posting her name so she's getting more clout on Twitter. Same thing other way around. If I think they're called Livies, I can't remember, but if they're like complaining about Taylor, she's still getting her name posted on Twitter 1,000 times. So I never really take any beef seriously. I really just think it's fabricated or at least very like enabled for the sake of the clicks and whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I am wearing, of course, my Olivia Rodrigo sweatshirt. It's
I
from
love her
Vamp.
music. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep pretending you don't and just like her.
Okay.
Okay, so another thing that Monia has talked about a lot, again, that's the anti-phantom or fandom expert, but she's talked about anti-phantom, which is like people who are obsessively anti somebody. You know what I mean by that. Like I'm sure you've encountered it. What does that look like in the Swiftie space? Is it mostly like ex-Swifties who are anti-fans?
No, the loudest people are, I don't know what to call them beyond like the common folk. So I can't think of a better word, but like just non-Swifties, the people who just don't like Taylor, I think would be the general population of people who don't like Taylor. That's typically who it is. I mean, sometimes like, I don't know, some band dislikes her. I think apparently Metallica wore like a weird shirt the other day that people were getting upset about. I don't really care, but people were upset about it. Called it like a psyop or something. I think it was a joke. I have no idea. But yeah, it's just like general regular people. I mean, they're not regular because they don't like Taylor, so in my eyes, they're just kind of like less than, but they're people.
They're normies. They're
They're
normal.
normies, yeah.
Maybe even to sound very millennial, muggles. um,
In a minute.
yeah, so that's interesting because the main like contact with fandom that I've had for a musician was Emily Autumn, and she has a lot of intense anti-fans, but they're like former fans of hers,
Mm.
and she acquires these anti-fans mostly because she just makes stuff up about herself, and people get tired of her just like lying for
Oh.
no reason, um, or sometimes very little reason. Like she, in all public places, moved her birth year forward 2 years at one point, just to say that she was fresher out of being a teen prodigy, basically, for like one album, and then just like kept it up, changed Wikipedia, everything, just suppressed information about her actual date of birth, or lied about like her original name or whatever. So anyway, you can see why like this would acquire anti-fans. Um,
I have a question. One of the people who just joined, how do you pronounce, is that like gnocchi? Gnocchi, like the pasta is like
not
gnocchi?
chick.
Not chick. Oh, I got really excited, like gnocchi, like the. Oh, there's no I in there. I'm sorry. Wow. All right, keep going.
Yeah, not chick apocryphon. It's a reference to like Gnostic.
I
There's like
just thought I saw gnocchi.
gotcha. Um, yeah, it is. Isn't nochi the pasta?
Yeah, it has like potato or whatever in
Oh,
it.
okay. Yeah. Um, so I eat a lot of French fries, so I have potatoes inside me a lot. But so okay, your actual research is first, you research Tay Tay a lot, obviously, but
Sure.
also clinical psychology.
Hmm.
What is the clinical in clinical psychology? What does that mean? Because we have had a clinical psychologist on before, Darby Saxby, whose book everybody should buy. That's Dad Brain. But what exactly is clinical?
Clinical, not to use the word in the definition, refers to typically clinical population. So people who have a clinical diagnosis, fall within criteria for a specific disorder, as opposed to developmental, which is either normative development across the lifespan or at least examining like what predicts different trajectories of development in like community samples and what have you. But clinical itself is about the populations that uh, meet criteria essentially for depression, ADHD, any of that.
Gotcha. Interesting. So it's like abnormal. What do you like? Abnormal psychology? Is that kind of the term?
I did have a textbook that was abnormal psychology. I don't know if that's still the PC way to go about it. I have no idea. But
Yeah.
yes,
Gotcha.
I did have, yeah, that essentially, yeah.
Okay. Cool. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your like special track within this field has to do with ADHD and or autism.
So ADHD was kind of originally my main interest, research wise, but I've shifted to a more developmental psychopathology framework, which means kind of combines clinical and development, where you're looking at different mechanisms that predict why certain kids will go on to experience depression or why some kids will go on to not experience depression even though they experience the same upbringing. So what's like a protective factor, what's driving this pathway. So that's again more of like a broad, we call it like a broadband spectrum. So when you have diagnostic criteria, it's binary where it's yes, they have the diagnosis, they meet criteria, no, they don't. But in development and a lot more research now, it's more popular. It's just looking at level of symptoms essentially. So it's not focused necessarily on ADHD or autism. The broadband scales that are most recognized called externalizing. So disorders that or behaviors that you can see. So hitting, yelling, screaming, pushing, running around, breaking rules, what have you, would be externalizing. So behaviors that are directed outwards. And there's internalizing, which are the behaviors directed inwards. So the ones you can't overtly see. So rumination, you can't see what it looks like when You kind of can, but anxiety, fear, what have you, depression, that's not like an overtly visible behavior by nature. So we look more so at the two pathways of psychopathology. I'll say two categories of psychopathology rather than focusing on a specific diagnosis.
Hmm. So it's you don't necessarily study, yeah. So it's not like the binary yes or no. They do or don't have it, but it's like individual traits or like levels of traits, kind of.
Yeah, and that's a thing you mentioned, traits. I'm big into temperament now, not temperature, temperament. You call that, it's
Mhm.
like the precursor of personality. So temperament is essentially like these innate, biologically and ecologically driven traits in which affects how people respond to different emotions, respond to different environmental stimuli. So a lot of my work now is looking at how those different temperamental traits and how they're steady across development, how those relate to psychopathology symptoms on a broader level overall, again, rather than ADHD in particular, autism in particular.
Hmm. Gotcha. And is temperament like a thing that can change, or is it like what's fixed, like something biological?
So yeah, it's believed to be pretty stable across the lifetime. Um, like I said, it's a biologically driven, so it's a heritable technically, but also shaped by the environment, but it is largely viewed as stable.
That's fair. I should ask you to analyze my temperament, but I'm not going to do that. So, how do you measure temperament? Like, what is the measure of this? Is it like you take hair samples or something? And how do you find this substratum?
Well, you only take hair samples if they're being annoying. You kind of just want to get back at them for making the work difficult.
That's fair.
But temperament is observed typically as what is their pattern of behaviors and I'll say reactivity. So temperament's often measured with, they call it the toddler behavior questionnaire or the child behavior questionnaire or the adolescent, I think it's the adolescent behavior questionnaire, which can be a parent rating of a whole slew of behaviors. And those get calculated into a specific score. So you can have someone who's high negative emotionality, which can be sadness, anger reactivity, emotions and affect you would generally view as negative. There's positive affect, sometimes referred to as surgency, when you have kids that are like very, very exuberant, kind of go after everything, very excitable. And then you also have temperamental regulation, so looking at attentional control, what have you. So some of this, so I kind of went on a long-winded tangent,
That's
but
okay.
some of this is measured by observation. Some of it is measured by parent report or teacher report or self-report, depending on the age. But yeah, it's usually observation or pen and paper or computer survey.
Gotcha. So it's not like you drill into their brain and like find the temperament spot. Um,
Well, there are plenty of neurological studies that I can't think of any off the top of my head, but reasonably would someone that's very reactive, negative emotionality, maybe would probably show that in their amygdala, for example. So like, yeah, if you like cut their head open, like, wow, this is a huge amygdala. I don't think that's not quite how it works. But yeah.
only if they're very annoying to decapitate.
Yeah.
um, okay, so obviously, autism is a really hot topic in the news lately. We were told last year, I think, that there would be like an answer to the cause of autism by September, if I recall correctly.
Who said there would be an answer to the cause of autism by September?
I believe it was RFK. You know what I'm referring to.
I think, oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, so that's not how health works as a general guideline. So both physical, physiological, mental health, There is no root cause for one thing. Like there's no, you wouldn't say like, yes, we know that the microwave food causes cancer. That's the only thing that causes cancer. We know if you eat from the microwave, you are going to have cancer. You're going to, oops, oh my God, sorry. I almost knocked something over. We know for a fact that if you eat from the microwave, you're going to get cancer. Or we know for a fact, even people who smoke cigarettes don't all go on to develop cancer. There are so many other factors that are at play that contribute to whether or not you develop cancer, whether or not you, I don't know, get cancer, for example. And it's the same thing in the mental health field. Some disorders like ADHD have a very high heritability rate, but also there's other things that predict whether or not someone's going to have ADHD. Sorry. So if they were in utero exposed to depression, maternal depression, different medications, anesthetics, there's a slight possibility that can affect brain development and influence or increase the risk of developing ADHD. But that by itself has really small effect sizes. So saying that we're going to find the cause of autism is like saying you're going to find the cause of, I don't have an analogy, so I'm going to stop it there. It's
why
moronic.
We allow strong words on this podcast.
Okay.
And it's fascinating. The word vodcast is so fascinating to me because it's like a combination of, what was it, like iPod, broadcast, and video. Anyway, there's so many. For those who aren't familiar, vodcast just refers to a podcast with a visual element, which often is just me. But Melissa has her camera on. So why are people obviously are like, a lot of people are sort of clamoring to figure out a cause or the causes or what have you of autism. Why do you think that is? And it's okay if there's no clear answer, you know?
Why do I think that people are clamoring to find a cause?
Yeah, like why are people so like, I don't know if you'd say like concerned or interested in specifically like autism?
Sure. Well, autism is a spectrum disorder, or it's the autism spectrum disorder. So it is a very, very broad range of symptom presentation, impairment in life. There are people who have severe impairment from a very severe autism disorder. That's not the way to say that, but they might be nonverbal. There might be other underlying disorders, other co-occurring disorders that are going on that make communication difficult, that make emotion regulation very, very, or dysregulated is the better word. And so there are some people who do face a lot of impairment. And, you want to help the people that are struggling to fit in with society. Now, whether or not society should become more accepting and accessible is a whole nother story. But in some people's intentions is just to make life more livable for other people. I think for other people's reasons, it's to say make money, because if you can say, hey, here's the thing everyone's talking about, I found the cure for it, or I found the cause for it, the one cause, that's going to be lucrative. But again, there's no one cause, there's no one thing. And then I also think people like finding something to point blame at. For a long time, autism or ADHD was considered like a parent disorder. So your child is autistic or your child has ADHD because you were a bad parent. Finger pointing, when we know that's not the case. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder, meaning it occurs when your brain is developing. And that's how you get the disorder. That's how the disorder kind of forms. So I think it's kind of a mix of all three. Again, it's like finding a scapegoat to like they're the worst, and then they're giving kids autism, or to again get attention because I found the cure, or to generally just help make life more livable. So there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah, so like some of the reasons are noble. It's just like helping people, but sometimes it is like finding blame. I guess sometimes I encounter like the sort of Maha autism skeptic types among like parents of people who have autism, so like I think they might have they might be in the more like noble motive category, I guess. But it's definitely hit the news like constantly over the last few years or so. Is there so like and there's also been a boost in like numbers of diagnoses, right? Or is
Hmm.
that okay, that's correct. So some people say that this is, and I'm not an expert on this at all. John, Christianity on the Spectrum, is an expert on some of this stuff too. Um, but some people say that it's like more people with ASD1, I think it's called, getting diagnosed.
Hmm.
Um, some people say it's the criteria being loosened. I know that's a really complicated topic, but why do you think the numbers have gone up?
So when you're talking about numbers, do you mean like prevalence statistics from the CDC or from, I guess, prevalence comorbidity studies where they assess here's a subgroup of the population from 2024, 1% of the people here had autism compared to 0.005 in 1901 or something. Like, is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about like people observing and saying like, oh yeah, I just see autism around a lot more than I used to?
I think the rate of diagnoses has just gone up, right? I'm definitely not talking about like anecdotal people calling each other autistic. Um, so like the actual rate of diagnosis gone up? Just like total?
It, yeah, in general, I'm not an autism expert. Would never call myself that. But as we get better at diagnosing things, we learn new assessment methods. As we redefine criteria and start to understand different diagnoses uh, better, yeah, we're going to identify it more. But
Hmm.
it's not. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. You can keep going with what you were saying.
I was going to go on kind of like a called a rant slash tangent. I feel like there's always a like hysteria in the news that like more kids are getting diagnosed with ADHD. Like everyone has ADHD now. We're overdiagnosing kids so we can drug them. Now, medicating kids is a very difficult subject. So I understand that. But it's always kind of this like this scare of they're now overdiagnosing kids for the sake of either pushing medication or to make it easier to handle them because oh yeah, one kid runs around, that's totally normal for a 5-year-old, so why now we're going to give them a diagnosis. It's not what it is. I think back to actually an episode of South Park that God probably came out 20 years ago, and they did a sort of a play on that where all of the students were sent to a psychiatrist because none of them could sit still or they were talking during class or what have something very ridiculous because the South Park people like to beat a dead horse and get into the absurdism. But yeah, so everyone received the ADHD diagnosis. Everyone was given Ritalin, and then they all turned into zombies, more or less. And then they were given Riddle out or Riddle off. I can't remember. So Ritalin is a common stimulant medication. But then South Park also introduced Riddle off or Riddle out, which canceled out the effects of Ritalin. But I guess what I'm getting at here is there's always this like trend in the media. I guess you can't really call it a trend. There's a theme in the media that we're overdiagnosing, we're over-medicating, we're over-pathologizing, essentially. So that's always kind of been around. So I have trouble taking that seriously just because, yeah, we get better at detecting things. More people get access to care, especially now that telehealth or virtual therapy assessment is a thing. Now it's hard to do assessment virtually, but it's more accessible in general. So more people are going to get diagnosed because more people can afford to go to the doctor or what have you.
Gotcha. So yeah, there's definitely some kind of scare going on. It seems to have intensified, at least in my like feeds. It seems to have intensified recently. Um, at least well, recently, as in like last 2 years. You know, whatever. Once you're old enough, 2 years seems like a very short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say I'm a vampire. Not that anybody ever says I'm a vampire. But the so you were mentioning assessments. Have you done assessments?
Not for autism. So there's very specific, rigorous training for diagnosing autism. But I've worked with both adults and kids, so like ADHD, learning disorders, personality disorders, depression, anxiety, what have you. But actual autism diagnosis has to go through like a very specific, rigorous set of evaluations that are very expensive to get trained in and also very difficult to get trained in. So if you're not doing a lot of autism diagnosis, it's not worthwhile to do the training.
That makes sense. But do you do any kind of assessment?
Yeah. Like for like ADHD, I do IQ assessments or cognitive assessments. When we look at possible learning disorders, so think dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, that's looking at, do they have a difficulty understanding letters, math concepts, writing, what have you, relative to others their age. So we do assessment for that. And then we also do the IQ to make sure that the impairment is not expected given the level of cognitive functioning, essentially. You need to have that disparity.
So with the ADHD assessment, I'm curious if you could walk through what that entails.
A magician never reveals her secrets.
Okay, that's not going to make anyone suspicious at all.
Well, what we do a pretty typical battery of hitting people with battery of assessments. So there is a interview. So for kids, we interview the parents if the kids are old enough or able to sit still long enough. We'll try to get some data from the kids. Though kids aren't typically accurate reporters of their own functioning until like closer to 10, 11. But so we do a background interview to see like what are historical factors that are leading to or contributing to these symptoms, family history, like is there a shared history of ADHD because it's very heritable or has a high heritability, I'll say, rate. And then we also do questionnaires. So parent will fill out, it's called either the behavioral assessment scale for children. There's the CBCL, it's been around longer, child behavior checklist. So we'll self-report like from parents. And then those are scored and generated into, we call those T-scores because they're normed on the population. So it's where you're falling relative to the general population on symptoms. So are they scoring higher in impulsivity and hyperactivity relative to other 8-year-olds, their age, other 8-year-olds. And then we also, observation is really important because you can't really diagnose someone as hyperactive if you bring them into the clinic and they just sit still like this for 2 hours. Like, that would be a very telltale sign there's something else going on. And we also need a big part of it is needing multi-rater or multi-informant reports because in the criteria for ADHD, for example, impairment has to be evident across more than one setting. So home and school. So if kid is only hyperactive at home but is a little angel at school, we would say that's probably not ADHD because there's something going on at home that's facilitating this hyperactive behavior. And at school, teachers are saying, no, Johnny sits through the entire class, perfect student, what have you. So you need the multiple settings of symptoms.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Does this make kids nervous to be like asked about?
Yes and no. You get the occasional parent that's like, don't tell my kid we're doing an assessment for psychopathology. We don't want them to know that. And then you get kids that they know why they're there because they're getting in trouble at school all the time. So it's really not a surprise. So they're not that nervous about it. And then, yeah, sure, if you get the more anxious, introverted kids, sometimes even just the interacting with a strange adult, I'm a very strange adult, for, an hour and change can make them very nervous. So, you get a fair mix.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like I would have liked the attention, to be honest, but that's just me. Um, so one of another topic that comes up a lot that and it's a fraught one, so prepare to get canceled.
Okay.
Uh, when when the six people watching currently, uh, I think I mentioned that the stream wouldn't be happening as usual before I knew that there would be a guest. So I think a lot of people were just like, "Oh, off the calendar, whatever." Anyway, people will see the recording and you'll get canceled. So self-diagnosis is definitely a thing that like, well, it's a thing that exists, and people talk about it a lot, and people have, shall we say, mixed feelings
Yeah.
about it. Uh, how this is like maybe a concrete way of putting the question to get into it. Like, how accurate do you think self-diagnoses of, say, ADHD tend to be by adults?
Well, not very, because ADHD has to have an onset of before the age of 12. Symptoms have to have occurred before the age of 12. And if you're interviewing an adult that's, let's say, 45, I mean, thinking back 30 years is pretty difficult. And some people don't understand like that element of it, that it has to be evident in childhood for it to qualify for diagnosis. So for that reason alone, people are often can be wrong about their self-diagnosis. There's also a lot of misconception about disorders in the media. So, not to self-disclose, but I didn't think I had ADHD when I was younger. I mean, now looking back, okay, I was a little hyperactive, but people don't focus as much on the inattention or like what it might look like in girls versus boys. So people might not recognize the disorder because they have a preconceived idea of what it is, when really these disorders are all very multifaceted and can look like different things in different people. And then you have I'll say the social contagion of, well, this person on TikTok said that they have autism and these are their 10 symptoms. So I have these same 10 symptoms, I must be autistic. Or I have these 10 same symptoms, I must have ADHD. Or I have these 10 same symptoms, I must have anxiety. And I think it's important to be very aware of your symptom or your experiences of what you're feeling, because it is helpful for advocating for yourself and looking for help, and getting advice and whatnot. So I think it's good for people to be aware of, hey, I'm experiencing this cluster of symptoms, and it's impairing my quality of life. Maybe I should go get a professional opinion on it. So I think it's good in terms of self advocacy. But the people who say, oh, you definitely have autism or you definitely have ADHD, to a person on Twitter they're talking to, you're missing all of the data that you would need to make a point on it, make a decision on it.
Yeah, I think that I definitely see that sort of like, oh, if you have this particular thing, you definitely have ADHD or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like oftentimes it's posed as how to describe it, like this person definitely knows what they're talking about, and this one weird trick will, immediately identify you as having ADHD or something, or like only people with ADHD would see this way, or whatever. And I've always been curious about that. And one thing I'm also curious about, and this also opens several cans of very slimy worms, but sorry for that disgusting image. Uh, you mentioned social contagion. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm always curious about what exactly that means, because I usually think of a contagion, and this is me totally non-expert. I'm not, it, yeah, my level of expertise on this is I failed an ADHD test once. Um, so, so people tend to use contagion to refer to like a disease. So, hantavirus was in the news for like 2 seconds recently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But social contagion, it sounds like oftentimes people don't mean actually having a condition. If
Yeah,
that
that was I don't know, a choice of words that came out of my mouth, and not necessarily the same definition that people would generally give it. I more so meant like people see that, oh gosh, this person just got diagnosed with autism. Maybe I'm autistic, or this person just got diagnosed with ADHD. Maybe I have ADHD. My friends all have ADHD, and I seem to have a lot in common with them. Like I must have ADHD too. So it's more so just as you grow aware of different pathologies, you may start to identify with them, especially if there's someone who has the pathology that says like, oh yeah, you definitely have ADHD like me. The more you hear about it, the more you think, oh, well, what if I have that? So it's more so what I meant.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely how I hear it used pretty often. It's just interesting that contagion seems to mean something different, if that makes sense. Like it almost seems to me almost more like an identity,
I
an
think that's a good way to put it, like an
identification of
identity. Yeah.
like a social contagion of like identification with the condition, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
That makes that, yeah, spot on.
Interesting. Yeah, so I guess it's just like my particularly literal latching onto the term contagion that like confuses me. Look, I confuse myself about stuff all the time. It's fine. Um, I Another thing that comes up sometimes with me is that since I was homeschooled, there's like the question of are you autistic or homeschooled? And for me, the answer is homeschooled. Um, but I won't get into that because I think that that question answered itself kind of. Um, so ADHD in particular, you mentioned this, what was it, South Park
Mm-hmm.
episode? So we talked a little bit about why people are worried about like autism. Why do people seem so concerned about the prevalence of ADHD? And like again, I think rates are rising. Is that correct? Not rates of the actual phenomenon, but at least diagnosis rates.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah, especially yeah, that sounds about right. I haven't looked at a prevalence study in a minute, but I should definitely know that. I could say depression rates have definitely risen. Anxiety, COVID screwed up a lot of people, just
Mm.
the shutdown and whatnot. Um, what was the question? Was why are people concerned about it?
Why are people concerned about the rise in ADHD diagnosis? Yeah.
Well, and that's a good question. I mean, the more they learn about it, the more like they see how it can be impairing, or what does it mean if I have it? Am I going to have a difficult time finding a job, making friends, what have you? I mean, just the more you hear about something, the more present it is and viewed as either scary or this disease or what have you. So I think just the more people hear about it, the more concerned they get. Because, oh, I don't want to catch that. Or what if my kid has it? What if I did something to make my kid have it? Which again is not how ADHD or any neurodevelopmental disorder works. But it's this fear of like, how am I going to deal with it if I have it? Or medicate. I think medication is another thing where people are really concerned about kids getting over medicated, especially ADHD medication, stimulant medication in particular, has a very high abuse rate. I did do some reading the other day where actually the abuse rate of the different stimulants has actually profoundly decreased in the past 2 decades. It's still higher than it wanted to be, but it has decreased like significantly. But that's one of the concerns, is that people think, okay, well, now we just have teenagers snorting Adderall in their room because they told their teacher they can't focus well, and now they're given like essentially the same structural makeup of like cocaine or something like that. So they think that like, okay, we're giving kids crack essentially.
Yeah, I definitely hear the fear of the medication a decent amount where they're like, we're giving our children meth. Um, but
Olfenidate. That's the drug name. It's methylphenidate. Sorry.
oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah. So definitely, we're definitely giving the kids meth. Have you ever smelled meth out of curiosity?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, growing up rural, I have indeed smelled meth. It does not smell good. Um, but yeah, so what the South Park episode, people turned these kids into zombies. Is that like a fear that parents have, for instance? Like that it'll alter what their kids are like, or that like the how do what are people afraid of with medications in children aside from like the addiction?
I would say how it affects future development. Does it stunt growth? Does it alter brain chemistry, pruning, what have you. That's not the right word. I just threw a random neuropsychology word in there, and that was not it. But yeah, concerned about affecting development. The same way people were scared for the longest time that if you drink caffeine, if you're, before you're fully grown, that it's going to stunt your growth. But I think recent studies have also shown that that's not necessarily the case. So it's that fear of hurting kids' development, side effects sometimes, and over medication. Wow. Over medication, over pathologizing. Wow. I can't talk today, but it's fine.
That's okay. Yeah. So over pathologizing, as in like kids having normal traits that are being pathologized, because I hear this a lot in like, how would you describe it? Gendered parent discourse. So like boys being pathologized for having traits that are natural to boys and girls. Do you think that that's an actual like concern to have about like specifically boy child traits being pathologized?
So, sorry, can you say that one more time? So, boy traits being pathologized if they're present in girls and vice versa, or just boy?
Do you think that boy traits being pathologized as ADHD is a problem? So, like overdiagnosis of boys for acting like boys.
So,
And it's okay if there's no.
No. I'm thinking like, so with assessment, that's we do a lot of questions. We do a lot of tests. We do a lot of like observation. Now, that's not necessarily the case everywhere you go. Like a doctor's office, your primary care physician might give your mom the Vanderbilt, which is a ADHD assessment for kids, and mom might fill that out and endorse 6 or 9 out of the 7 out of the 9 symptoms for hyperactivity, 8 of the 9, whatever, for inattention, and might say, okay, yeah, you're probably ADHD, and may give you medication. So in diagnosing it, there is a bit of a divide in terms of how rigorous it is. So I guess the concern that people will be overdiagnosed or boys' behavior, hyperactivity will be overpathologized. But the hope is that a physician or clinician understands that that something is pathologized if it's above and beyond what is expected for the developmental age. Is it causing impairment? Is it inappropriate in multiple settings? So the hope is that people are getting diagnoses because of those factors, the fact that it's impairing their life and social skills, what have you.
So does the gender maybe not matter if it's impairment, if that makes sense?
Sorry, my ADHD is kicking in. So the gender actually, it's a good question because sometimes we see gender differences in expression of not only ADHD but depression, autism. There are some studies that show the way the disorders manifest in girls versus boys might be a little different. Girls, for example, even if they do have the hyperactivity symptoms, might, because they are socialized to be quiet and socialized to take up as little space as possible, not to get in a soapbox, they will outlet these behaviors in other ways, their ADHD in other ways. So they might be really quiet in class and they might go undiagnosed because they're not being as loud as Johnny, the boy with ADHD, who's like running around in circles and like throwing erasers at the teacher because he's impulsive. Relative to him, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, no, she's fine. She might be failing her classes because she can't pay attention or because she loses everything or she is just like playing with her hands the entire time. But because she's not being disruptive, she may be less likely to get diagnosed. So gender can matter, especially if like socialized norms factor into how the disorder will manifest.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because you've mentioned a couple of times the thing of like blaming parents of like autism from bad parenting or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I was reminded the other day of Betty Friedan, who, for those who aren't familiar, she kicked off the second wave of feminism in 1963, with the book The Feminine Mystique, in which she claims at one point that over smothering mothers make their sons gay, which I don't think is the case. Betty, that she was a little off on that one. Uh, yeah, we could go on. I could go on a whole thing about her perspective
No,
on
actually,
this.
I saw an article published in Lancet, so a big journal, academic or research journal, and it said hugging mom increases the chances of becoming gay by 6.88 times. So you have 6.8 greater odds of becoming gay every time you hug your mom. That's how it works.
It sounds exactly right. Mothers should be very cold toward their sons in particular.
If you hug them, they will get gay.
Yep, they will catch the gay.
They will catch the
gay. Usually we go on for a full hour, but I feel like that's probably a good point to wrap up.
Great. Oh God, this is going to be seen in like out of context, and they're going to be like, Melissa thinks that you catch gay from hugging your mom. So can't wait for that to bite me in the butt one day. But
I feel like the proper response to that is be like, I got gay from hugging your mom.
That would be a good response. Yeah, no, actually.
Yeah, so I really appreciated the setup to that joke because it sounded like it was going to be really serious. Okay, so what are you working on now? Do you have any projects you're going through as we wrap up? What are you working on?
God, a lot. I'm in, as you said in the beginning, I'm in a PhD program, so always doing something. I have to do what they're called the prelims or the clinical comps, where I do this thorough review and critique of a certain subsection of the literature that I'm interested in, the psychopathology or developmental psychopathology literature that I'm interested in. I have to write about it, critique it, whatever. I'm about to, hopefully, near submitting a paper that looks at maternal psychopathology, or a publication, mechanisms from maternal psychopathology to adolescent depression, adolescent physical health outcomes as well, through social skills. So viewing social skills as that mediating pathway that explains why we may see kids with, let's say, months of depression, for example, go on to develop internalizing problems through social skills. And there's a whole host of mechanisms in between those two. So you can't model them all. You make educated assumptions based on what the literature says, but I'm going real off topic. But yeah, publication that's hopefully going out soon. Submitted soon. So that could mean it'll be rejected 4 times and then accepted in a year. But yeah, just kind of grad school stuff and listening to Taylor Swift and my.
Do you have any concerts coming up that you're going to go to?
No, Taylor's not touring right now.
Okay. The only person worth seeing.
I have no money. I have no money. I couldn't afford to see her on tour if she was now. So I'm grateful she's not, because I'd be really pissed off if I couldn't go. I have no money.
That's fair. So the answer again is you're in grad school?
I'm in grad school. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. For those who see this mostly tomorrow, the recording will be going out tomorrow morning, and subscribe. And thank you for coming on, Melissa.
Yeah, I do TikTok parodies of Taylor Swift song on Pokemon. Whatever. Bye. That was a weird way to try to sign off. Yeah.